In my last video, I asked y'all to recommend me some mod packs to try out, and boy howdy did you all certainly deliver. You guys sent me so many mod packs, but one of them that actually oddly stuck out to me was one called Raspberry Flavored. Not only for the fact that it was the most recommended thing in my comment section, but also because of the fact that it only had 12,000 downloads, which compared to the other mod packs I've seen, this is comparatively small. So I figured, sure, I'll give this pack a shot, but before I begin, I do need to give some disclaimers. First off, in my last video, I did receive some comments stating that by saying the mod pack does something, I'm actually depriving the mods responsible of that change for their deserved credit. And I fully agree. Yeah, it definitely was depriving them of their credit, and I feel kind of bad about it because I wasn't really thinking of it like that, but you know, I can understand how that could be perceived, so I will make an adjustment here. So from this point forward, if at any point I state the mod pack does something, make the assumption that there's a mod responsible unless it's explicitly stated the pack devs did it. 9 times out of 10, the feature added or reworked was not the work of the pack creators, and if I had to run through every potential mod in the list as well, I'd probably end up in a psych ward, so that's why I don't typically run through the whole list of mods. That being said, this particular pack made this easy by providing a credit screenshot, so here it is. There you go. Thank you, Berry Bush Creative, for making my job easier this video. And lastly, I just wanted to take the time to thank you guys for the incredible amount of support you've given me lately. Words cannot express how cool it was to see everyone in the community come together to hold a discussion over me just rambling over a mod pack, and it has me excited to keep making content for you guys. So, without further delay, if you like what you see here today, consider hitting that like and subscribe button, maybe even share this with your friends. Or don't. You do you. I'm not your mom. And let's get a taste of this raspberry flavored pack. Yes, that was a bad joke, and no, I'm not sorry. Raspberry Flavored is a Vanilla Plus mod pack. However, unlike a certain pack we talked about, this pack actually aims to make a different experience instead of trying to one-up the devs. Raspberry Flavor aims for a more cohesive experience with a prolonged early game, mods with altered recipes or features to fit the other parts of the game, and the reworking or straight removal of different base game features. As I go through this pack, I'm going to grade it in the same way that I graded Better Minecraft, with the exception that I'm not going to grade it on whether it's a better Minecraft or not, because that is not the intentions of the pack. So with that in mind, it will be graded on what additions the pack provides, what reworks are done and does it improve the pack experience, and finally my overall opinion on the pack. So with all that out of the way, let's just fly right in with the additions. This pack admittedly doesn't have as many additions as it does reworks, but that doesn't mean that it's addition vacant. For example, the pack has brand new tools and armor sets related to the new ores that have been thrown into the pack, sort of to close the gap between resources. Examples being resources like copper, rose gold, electrum, and steel, of which the last two I didn't end up getting, which you'll know why later. These new materials are actually interesting, as it's not just a simple upgrade in some cases. For example, rose gold has silk touch built into it, so you don't even need the enchantment for it anymore. I genuinely liked this addition, as adding in new resources while not invalidating diamonds in a Vanilla Plus pack makes the sense of progression feel more consistent. On top of the new ores and metals, there's also a major emphasis in this pack with the Create mod, as well as the handful of add-on mods for it. Create admittedly takes center stage in this pack, not only because it's the most obvious addition, but because a lot of this pack's progression is handled through the processing methods within Create. For example, a lot of the new alloys are either exclusively possible with Create or more efficient if Create is used. On top of this, there's also a healthy helping of new trees, biomes, and critters that feel very vanilla friendly here. I didn't realize just how much I needed deer or grizzlies in Minecraft, but here we are. Get on it, Mojang. Other than that, I can't really think of other additions as mod pack makes. This may sound like a sad thing, but in the space of Vanilla Plus packs, light amounts of additions is generally considered a good thing, otherwise it loses that Vanilla Plus feeling. Where Vanilla Plus truly shines at is actually within its reworks. This pack's main selling point is the sheer number of rework it brings to the table, and while a handful of them are outright mentioned in the mod page, there are far more under the hood. One of the major focuses of the mod pack was to rework the early game to take just a little longer to go through. This focus alone is immediately noticeable in a number of ways. For starters, stone tools have been replaced with copper tools. This means wood tools maintain having a use beyond the first 5 seconds of the game. This rework, while mild, was honestly pretty refreshing by itself and switched up my approach just enough to make it feel less like starting my 1000th world all over again. On top of this, every tool across the board received an increase to durability and mining speed, I presume to make the early tools feel less like a sack of butt cheeks to work with given the progression changes and the lack of incremental enchantments. More on this later. And another early game rework is the changes to a good handful of recipes. And by good handful, I mean nearly all the vanilla ones. Pretty much every recipe's been changed. Yeah, despite the pack stating that it only really prolonged the early game, it actually prolonged every aspect of the game by changing up the recipes. Iron armor, for example, is now made with plates, which makes Create a part of the core game progression. Not to mention more subtle changes like furnaces requiring coal. Wait, is it Ferni? Wait, why does it feel weird to say furnaces? Okay, it's furnaces. Why is my brain like, oh, it's Ferni? I cannot believe I have an English major, man. There's now a flint-based flint and steel. Beds require a bedroll, and wood's been replaced with logs. An enchanting table now requires an enchanted book. Okay, listen, not all these recipes are winners. There are loads of these recipe changes, and in the context of making everything more cohesive and less of a rush to the end, makes it far more enjoyable in my opinion. However, speaking of end, I think it's high time I address the elephant in the room. This pack doesn't just rework and add stuff. It also outright removes features. In this pack, the end and all its contents have been removed, as well as villagers and illagers, every structure involving them, enchantments like mending and infinity or any basic stat boosting enchantment, and the OG method of opening a nether portal. More on that last one later. The pack does acknowledge this as a controversial change, and I'd agree. I'm never really a huge fan of a game that makes it its solution to a problem to outright remove it, and that same mentality applies to a pack for me. This action is what I like to call fixing through a mission for future reference. However, in this pack, I'll give it a pass on most of these removals on the principle that not only do these features interfere with the general sandbox vibe of the pack, but also on the grounds I can't think of another way they could have gone about it. I did say most though, because one of the glaring issues I have right away was the nether portal change. I'm gonna try to be very nice about this. This change sucked. You might have noticed at this point that there's a distinct lack of nether footage. That's because I legitimately couldn't get there. What this pack does to slow down the player's path to the nether was to require dimensional tiers to open the portal. Dimensional tiers are only gotten from crying obsidian, according to all resources I could find in the game. With this change, you'd think that the pack, after all the crafting changes it has made, would make some way to obtain crying obsidian without finding a ruined portal. Nope. And that's exactly why I didn't get nether footage. This, my friends, is the very first instance on this channel of what I'd like to affectionately call the invisible progression wall. This is when a game, or in this case a mod pack, interrupts all of its pre-established flow with a sudden, insane halt to the player's journey that they wouldn't have seen coming. Much like an invisible wall. This change, in my opinion, actually ruins a lot of the pack's good progression flow. Up until this point, it was a seamless journey of upgrades and it felt like I was opening up to new features in the world while discovering new recipes, but the moment you reach the nether portal requirement, the flow just abruptly stops. Your progress became no longer dictated by your skill as a player, it became dictated by random world gem with no tools to help you locate the structure. Now somehow I'm guessing that someone in the comments is going to tell me that the end isn't accessible unless you find the stronghold, and this is basically the same thing, but the difference is with the stronghold you have the Eyes of Ender to help you find the portal, where here there's absolutely zero tools to help you find a nether portal. One has you traveling in a suggested direction, and one has you traveling in zero direction. What do I know? Maybe some of you might like this change, and that's totally okay. However, for me, this is actually the point where I decided to put in my review. But before I get to my final thoughts, it's time for a lightning round of reworks I noticed while playing. Beds now speed up time instead of skipping it, so all tick-based processes will actually go faster while you're asleep. Sheep no longer drop wool on death and require shears, but early game wool is still achievable with cattails. You now have to sand off ores like redstone, lapis, and diamond, which can be done with sandpaper or a grinding stone. The smithing table is now a major part of progression for tools thanks to the new alloy metals, and there's a new type of soil that makes farming faster. I never personally made this, but I had the prerequisite land type to start making it, so I wanted to bring it up. All the reworks I just mentioned I actually thought were really cool and really solidified the pack's overall experience. And with the lightning round over, it's time for my overall thoughts. This pack was pretty good up until the end, and if what I said about the nether doesn't put you off, I'd highly recommend it. It's clear this pack had a lot of love put into it, and despite the flaws, I still found something to enjoy about it. Like, you'd think with all the removals I'd be kind of dissuaded from this, but oddly, missing the end wasn't a big deal. As a matter of fact, I think it complemented the pack because instead of focusing on trying to beat the Ender Dragon, I focused on just making things look cool. The changes to tools were impactful enough that I didn't feel like I really needed the enchantments either, which is fortunate because being forced to find an enchanting book to enchant tools didn't feel right either. Like, that recipe is just stinky. Like, it's bad. Wrong. Put it back. The pack for the most part is really well thought out, and nearly all the features, whether added by mods or a direct dev team rework, felt really cohesive, and I think the pack does really succeeded there. However, I do think that the approach to the nether needs to be reprocessed, as being unable to access the last portion of the pack without hoping random generation smiles your way felt really out of place compared to the rest of the pack. I loved a lot what the pack was doing before that point. It's just the nether's rework that oddly makes a once cohesively added feature feel detached. And with that statement, the review comes to a close. If you have any other packs you'd like me to try, leave a comment down below. My bias right now is anything but Vanilla Plus packs at this time, given I just played arguably 2 of those packs back to back, so shoot your shot and I'll likely respond. This has been the Bottom Dweller. Frankly, I prefer Strawberry.